Hey everybody, welcome back to another video update for Ember, the open world co-op mech versus kaiju game in development by Crixel Labs. My name is Mark Kern and I'm the creative director for Ember, and this series is another part of our documentary on how game companies and games get made. Now what we're doing here is something pretty special. We are building a low-end PC because a lot of gamers want to know, well, what kind of PC will I need to run Ember? Will I need a really maxed out rig, or can I use something a lot simpler like this rig? Well, today we've got parts for a $250 PC. This is about as low as you can go, and we're going to answer the question, does Ember run on a $250 PC? So the heart of our $250 gaming rig is going to be this AMD Athlon 200GE processor. On board is an APU. It's actually got a Radeon Vega graphics core on board, and we're going to see if this thing can actually run games, and games like Ember itself. Again, this is only a $50 to $60 CPU, and we'd like to thank AMD because they are one of our partners in developing Ember, and they provided the chip that we're going to be using today. Okay, so we're going to be taking our AMD processor and slotting that 200GE into this motherboard. This is a MSI B350M Gaming Pro motherboard. This is only about 75 bucks. It is a AM4 socket. We can upgrade the CPU later if we need to, but we're going to see just how low we can go and keep the price right around 250 to see if we can run Ember as well as a couple other games. Also going into this is a pair of sticks which form 8 gigabytes of DDR4 2800 RAM, and this runs for about 54 bucks. For storage, we're going to be using a SanDisk 120 gigabyte SSD drive. This thing sells for about $24 and should be plenty of storage for our game. Powering our system will be an EVGA 450BR bronze-rated power supply. This thing is only about 38 bucks and is going to provide plenty of power for that on-chip APU. All these parts will be fitted into our Rosewell FBM X1 case, which only runs about $26 online. So often what we do in games is we try to build really simple gaming PCs, something that we're sure a lot of gamers will have access to at not a great amount of expense. And we want to make sure that the game runs fairly well. Now, normally we don't go this low. This is really, really low. But for our purposes, we think if it runs on this, a $250 PC, then Ember can run on anything. There it is, $250 of gaming PC. Will it run Ember? Let's find out. Let's see if we can get an OS on here and get it to post, and we'll be right back. Hey, welcome back. So we built our $250 AMD 200GE powered PC, and we're gonna see if Ember runs on it. We installed an operating system. It did load up, it did boot just fine. We're really happy with the box. And now we're gonna try Ember for the first time. The first build we're going to try is the regular art demo. That's the art demo that's downloadable from our site from backers at my.ember.com. And we're going to be using MSI Afterburner here to benchmark it. MSI Afterburner is a popular overclocking utility for graphics cards. Now we're not going to be overclocking anything here, but it does give us a lot of good readouts for frame rate, memory usage, and CPU core loads. All right, so let's give it a try and see what happens. Okay, well, we got Ember running on our $250 PC with AMD 200GE graphics chip, CPU with graphics chip, and things are running, and we've set everything to low settings, and we also had to drop the resolution down to about 720p. Now, other people have done benchmarks with the AMD 200GE, and remind you, this is without a graphics card, and they discovered that you can't really game at 1080p. So we went with their recommendation and we dropped it down to 720p. And then we also dropped our dynamic resolution slider in Unreal down to about 75% of that. So we're getting a, I think, acceptable resolution here. I think this looks fine. The problem is it's only running at 5 frames a second, which I think you'll agree is not very gameable. So we're going to go into Unreal, poke around, and see if we can optimize this a little bit. Okay, so we went into Unreal and we poked around and we did find something. Like doofuses, we had left our environment capture on to every frame. And what does that mean? Well, the environment map is sort of like the fake way that reflections are done in the game. And we have a lot of shiny stuff in the game. The G-suits are shiny, the thumper is shiny, there's metal bits and all the pieces in the world that are shiny, and all this has to reflect sort of the scene. But the problem was we were updating it every frame, and it doesn't need to be updated every frame. So we turned that off and we made a new build and we're running it now, and things have improved. I mean, you can look around here and we've gone from about 5 frames a second here at our starting point to about 15 frames a second. But I think you can agree that's not good enough. So what are we going to do from here? Back into Unreal, see what else we can do. Okay, so what we did is we went back into Unreal and we started to play around with some things we could optimize for the game for lower end systems. One of the things that we looked at is our terrain system. Our terrain system uses a height field grid, which is basically a series of heights that are up and down that dictate where the mountains are and the valleys are. And we also use a technique called tessellation. So when the terrain is closer to you, we res it up really high with a ton of polygons to give you a bunch of little nooks and crannies and things like that in the surface terrain. Well, that's not really necessary unless you want the very highest visual quality, and most games don't use it. So we ended up turning it off to see what sort of improvement we could make. And you can see here that we've gone from 15 frames a second to 22 frames a second, which is a lot better. We're starting to get near that 30 FPS territory for a playable game, but it's still not where we want it to be. So let's go back to Unreal. We're almost at 60 FPS here. I mean, we're at 58. If I look around, it'll hit 64. This is amazing. This is on a $250 system. It doesn't even have a graphics card. It does have a Vega chipset on board this AMD CPU, but look, we're getting more than gameable frame rates here. This is great. And all we had to do was make everybody bald. It turns out that NVIDIA Hairworks is super expensive on low-end machines, and it is easily costing us half our frame rate when we've got characters on screen. So we talked to Epic and we discussed other ways to do hair because we didn't want to force bald characters on you. And luckily, we can use a combination of some of their hair shaders as well as the cloth sim to give you a hair system that does flow, that does respond, but isn't going to cost us a huge amount of frame rate. Well, I'm super pleased with this. I mean, I just never thought it would happen. I never thought that Ember would be running at basically 60 frames a second here on a $250 PC. That's amazing to me. That's really encouraging. So, you know, I think the question is answered. Can you run Ember on a $250 PC? And the answer is hell yeah, you can. I mean, you're not going to be running at the highest graphic quality settings, nor are you going to be running at full resolution. But I mean, the graphics quality here is still very good for what you're paying for, and it's completely gameable. I mean, you can be competitive with this. It totally works out. So what have we learned from this? Basically, we learned that we have to not be stupid with our environment maps and not render them every frame. We fixed that, and we've doubled our frame rate on most systems with that. We learned that Tessellating the terrain is probably not a good idea for low-end systems. It does cost us a huge amount of frame rate. We tripled our frame rate when we turned off tessellation on terrain. And visually, I'm hard-pressed to tell a difference here. I mean, I'll try it again at higher resolution, but I don't think we're losing a lot by ditching tessellation. So we'll be incorporating all these optimizations in future builds, and it looks like Ember is going to be able to run on lower-end systems. Now, we haven't finished optimization yet. We're still running with high-res textures here. We haven't downgraded the textures for low-end systems yet. We haven't done any LOD, so stuff you see in the background is rendering at full poly limit. So once we add those things in, you can expect the game to get a lot faster. But we also aren't running with any real gameplay yet. We've got basically an art demo, and while it is an art-heavy demo, we don't have any AI, we don't have any shooting, we don't have any gameplay going on. When those go in, things will start to slow down a bit. But maybe between the two, optimizing what we haven't optimized yet, as well as putting in gameplay, we're still going to land somewhere in this 60 FPS mode on a $250 PC. That's really great. I'm really impressed with this little CPU. We're going to try some other games here briefly with it to see how they perform. But yeah, it's a go. Ember, $250 PC, it just works.
We also tried running some other games on our $250 gaming PC. This is Overwatch, which is highly optimized and runs very well in the 40 to 60 FPS range, but it's very smooth and the gameplay is quite acceptable here. Now we also tried Epic's Fortnite on this 200GE processor with mixed results. Again, we're between 40 and 60 FPS, but you can see that the frame rate is spiking pretty badly, and we had some texture streaming issues that simply were not acceptable. I think with some settings tuning, this should be able to run. We've seen better benchmarks on this processor with this game, so we'll just have to try it and see. Here we have Ember running all 4 versions of this video side by side, from the unoptimized art build on the far left, which is currently available to backers, all the way to the fully optimized version that we did that's an internal build on the far right. Now you can see that we're getting 40 to 60 FPS again, but this is a very smooth 40 to 60 FPS. We're not seeing a lot of hitching, which makes us pretty happy. Now you'll notice that this is a 2-core CPU with 4 threads, and we're not really taxing the CPU very much. What we are bottlenecked on is the GPU, the little Vega graphics chip on board. And we need to do some more optimization on that. As we add more art into the game, as the terrain demo adds more stuff in the background, that's going to begin to matter more and more. We're running with full res textures right now. We can down res those to make them a little simpler. We're also running with full polygons, so there's no LOD or level of detail here. Things in the distance are running just as many polygons as things in the foreground. That old Omni frame there is all gray because of a texture setting we forgot to set for the demo, but we'll be fixing that shortly. But the Mark IIs here, Omni frames, even with their additional complexity, are running very well in the system, and they have a lot of textures as well, so we're pretty pleased with that result. All right, that's it for now. Join us next time for our next video update. If you liked what you see, please like and subscribe, and we'll see you next time.